There we go. So it is 6:30. It's actually 6:31. We have a good number of attendees in the room. I know we're also live on Facebook. So, if anybody throughout the webinar tonight has questions, you can certainly ask them in the Zoom Q&A. I'm going to try and watch the Facebook as well to see if there's any comments or questions on there, but I'm not guaranteeing I'm going to be able to get back and forth flipped to everything. So, I'll do my best, and whatever questions we miss, I know Debbie or I will answer them on Facebook if they're on Facebook and we miss them. We'll answer
Absolutely.
them, reply to your comments, reply to your questions there as well. So if you do have any questions, but we are here tonight to discuss cybersecurity, ransomware, HIPAA. Excuse me. I know there's a lot of, I'll say, pending changes to some of the HIPAA rules. Everything, as we know, that has all been paused, the enforcement of new regulations and
Actually,
whatnot, but we'll see.
actually, interestingly enough, the public comments on HIPAA were not paused.
Oh, really? Oof.
Yeah. So we have to remember that President Trump in January of 2021 signed an amendment to HIPAA. And it said that if you can demonstrate and document that you've had a security awareness plan in place for 12 months prior to a data breach, it creates a safe harbor. So yeah, I kind of think that he's gonna enforce that.
Yeah. Yeah. I I have heard through Facebook and a lot of different places people saying, oh, I think that's the last thing on his radar. And I think it was one of the last things he signed was Safe Harbor before the Biden inauguration. HIPAA is on his radar.
Oh yeah,
And,
huge.
coupling that with everything else going on with HHS and the fact that Medicare and Medicaid fraud represent $800 billion a year in unnecessary expense to the
Right.
taxpayers, it's going to be on the radar. And, I want to make sure people understand, because I actually just did last week or the week before, did our annual HIPAA training for my employees in my office.
Mhm.
And, that's one of the things everybody, hopefully, you have to do annual HIPAA training on your office's policies, procedures, and sanction policies, not just a blanket, this is HIPAA and this is what it stands for, and this is all the different ways it's misspelled. It has to be on your office's specific
Correct.
policies. And
Correct.
one of those is 196 audit control points. Those are
Mhm.
the things that an auditor looks at when they come in to do an inspection. One of those 196 things is you have to have a sanction policy, a
Oh yeah.
punishment for any employee who breaks any one of the other 195 rules.
Right.
Your training has to include the sanction policies in your office. And it may be different for each office. In my office, sharing your password, whether it's the domain password or a password to software or 365 or OneDrive or any of that, is a level 3 sanction, which means the
Right.
first time you do it, you're fired. But in a dental practice with 4 employees, it may be a level 2 sanction. I mean, it shouldn't be, but it may be. You may determine that that is good enough, and until it's proven otherwise, then that's what it is. Which, level 2 means you get a write up and then terminated the second time you
Oh,
do it.
no, no. Level two may be a lot more severe than that.
I
Level
mean,
one is I write you up or I have a conversation with you.
right.
Level two should have some impact.
It really should. I mean, our level 2 is a suspension. Our
Yeah.
level 2 is a 5-day suspension.
Yeah.
Level 3 is you're terminated on the spot. Level
Right.
1 is a write up. So, But then if you do a level one three times,
Times.
you're out. But a lot of people miss that
Mhm,
on the HIPAA training because they watched an online video or they went to, this is my favorite, they went to a CE class at the State Dental Association for HIPAA,
mhm.
took their whole team, and the trainer who did the HIPAA training told them this satisfies your annual requirement. Really? No, it doesn't.
It
It
really doesn't.
actually doesn't. And when we run into the safe harbor, you got to have that plan and you got to be following it for 12 months. And part of that is training.
Mhm.
And if you haven't done it, you don't qualify for safe harbor. But before we get too far into that, I mean, explain, I guess we're kind of starting in the middle, but can you explain what the safe harbor protection really is?
Sure. But first, let me start by saying who I am. You and I are friends, so
Right.
we assume everybody knows, but just in case somebody doesn't know, I'm Debbie Carr, and I am the CEO of DK Carr and Associates, and we are a cybersecurity consulting firm. We work strictly with healthcare. I'm certified in cybersecurity by two international organizations. This is my 10th year of doing of in cybersecurity. I can't believe it. 10 years have flown by. And so we help practices to meet the HIPAA rule as well as to navigate through an incident. So, in answer to your question, what is safe harbor? Safe harbor says that if you can document and demonstrate that you have had a security management plan in place that meets NIST. So NIST is the National Institute of Standards and Technology. So if you have the documentation to say we are using a NIST approved framework for our cybersecurity or for our security management plan, which by the way is required under HIPAA to have, and you have a data breach, it creates a safe harbor, which may reduce fines and penalties. The problem is I can't do 12 days, 12 years or 12 months worth of work in one day. It has to be a living, breathing program. And it starts with when you look at the HIPAA security rule, and unfortunately, many of those meetings that you go to where you take your team to HIPAA, they're doing the privacy rule, which is important. But in my world, privacy is what we're protecting. I don't really care if you're HIPAA privacy controlled because you probably aren't there either. I'm worried about the security. And under the HIPAA security rule, which by the way is the first part of the HIPAA rule, there's three parts. There's security, privacy, and then breach. So security is where I'm at. Privacy is what we're protecting, and breach is what we're defending against. So I use with my clients, I use a framework called the Cybersecurity Framework, and it was just updated in February of last year, 2.0. And what's really great about it is it's scalable, it's doable, it can be done. I have an office with a doctor and an assistant, and his wife comes in when the kids are in school, all the way up to a practice with 15 doctors and I don't know how many staff. It works. It's scalable. It's so scalable that my husband, who works for a defense contractor, he uses it in his work. So it's NIST approved. So right there, we've got that. But it starts with a risk analysis. And what I love, love, love about the proposed changes that are coming out is that they are more detailed on what you're supposed to be doing. So a risk analysis is required. It's the first thing that you're supposed to be doing. Only most practices have never done a risk analysis. And if they have, it's a questionnaire. It's not really a risk analysis. This is going to give more detail steps. Right now there's a lot of assumption that you've done the steps that you need to do to conduct a risk analysis. Have you identified what your assets are? You can't, what are you analyzing? If you don't have the precursor things in place, what are you analyzing? You really don't know. So the proposed changes are going to be more detailed. You will have a master inventory list. You will have a change management program. You will have a data mapping of how your data flows. You will conduct risk analysis on an annual basis.
Right.
And they're going to be even more detailed. But for me, it was easy because most of the things I'm already doing with my clients. We
Right.
do vulnerability scans. We do these things. So I had to write one policy and tweak two other ones so far.
Yeah, and I think it's important for people to understand right now, the way the HIPAA laws are written is really those 196 audit control points fall under one of two categories. They're either what's called required or
Hmm.
they're addressable.
Correct.
And required means you have to do it. Addressable means you have to address it, but how you do it doesn't really matter. Required is, listen, I need you to drive to the end of the street, turn left, go 3/4 of a mile, turn right, get on the highway, go 647.3 miles, get off there. That's required. Addressable is, I'm in Philadelphia, meet me in Orlando. I don't care how you get there. You still got to meet me in Orlando. How you get there doesn't matter.
Correct.
And I think a big part of the 2025 changes are there are things that are going from addressable to required
Absolutely.
because life
Encryption.
has changed.
It has changed. And that's the problem is we're still trying to do things the way we did 5 years ago. We're not, and hackers are taking full advantage of that. And these cyber threats are not going to go away. In fact, I predict that they are going to escalate. Um, just because. Take it for
And I
whatever way
can
you want.
tell you, having discussions with our clients, it's not a prediction. We've gone like 6 years since our last hack on a
Mhm.
on a dental offices network. This year we've had three already.
Yeah. And it's
And
only January.
it's January 29th. The month's not even over yet.
Right.
And we've had three already. I think all three of them are here, but um
Well,
it, it's
okay.
it's it's been crazy.
But the problem is again, they're going to the types of attacks that we're seeing these days. It used to be the threat actor or hacker would get into the system, they would drop their payload, everything would be encrypted. Here's the ransom note, and life went on. I've had clients where they didn't even bother encrypting because they had taken the data.
Right.
And in fact, you and I were talking last week about the Indiana doctor. There was an Indiana doctor that he just kind of wiped his systems and went on, and somebody asked for their records. Well, he couldn't deliver them because he didn't have them because the threat actor had them. He got fined $350,000 just by the state of Indiana. We're waiting to see what OCR is going to do with that one because you cannot hide. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's a very, very bad day when the FBI comes knocking at your door and shows up at your practice because your data is on the dark web. And see, that's the problem is that a lot of times the offices they don't, one, they don't have a plan as required to respond to attacks. Two, they don't know what they're required to do, and they don't make good decisions. They listen to their IT companies that are saying, yeah, we'll just wipe and restore. It's okay. Well, they're trying to cover themselves. They're not protecting the practice. They're protecting themselves. Anytime there is a cyber attack, your IT should come in and go, yep, you've been hit, unplug you from the internet and say, call a professional that knows how to navigate through these things.
Right.
Because if you don't do the right things in the right order at the right time, it can become very costly. It's a very costly event anyway. That's why I loved the uh, live that you did last week on cyber insurance. It's so critical. It should be part of your disaster plan to have a plan to help offset those costs because I can tell you forensics alone, which you are mandated to do because you have to do an investigation to determine who, what, when, where, and how they got into your system. Plus, we want to close that hole. We don't want them getting back in your system because that happens too.
Right.
So we want to make sure that we're protecting as we go forward, that we're implementing the right security controls. Because if we can show that you're taking this seriously, hopefully we can negotiate with your state reg and federal regulators that, yeah, we didn't have these things, but I believe that as we go into and since October, really, we have seen what we call the risk analysis initiative. I've seen fines levied against doctors for $10,000 on up to $3 million, and two of those are dentists.
Right.
So we for some reason have this mindset dentists are exempt. They're not. They're not exempt. And so it's real important that practices take security seriously. It's protecting your investment, the doctor's investment. He's a business owner. It's protecting his employees. It's protecting his reputation and his emotional. I can tell you, when these things happen, it's a roller coaster. It's an emotional roller coaster. I've had doctors on the floor, grown men in their server rooms crying, thinking that the world is ending. Now, if we do things in the right order, it's going to be a bad couple of days, couple of weeks, but we're going to get over it.
Mm.
And, we're going to get you back to producing. And that's why you need to have that disaster plan.
Right.
And so we're going to get you to go through it.
Yeah, I think it's important. I did post in the chat, I posted a link to one of the articles about that dentist in Indiana
Oh, okay.
who was just fined the 350,000. I think it was just like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I think it was January 7th was when that got fined, but now they're referring to OCR, so there's going to be even more. A lot of people don't realize a couple things. Number one, anytime OCR or ONC, any of them issue a fine, a violation, it's public record.
Right.
You can go on to the HHS website and search violations. And I usually search for keyword dentistry, dental, family dental, all those wonderful keywords that bring up all of
Right.
them. And you can see them. It's not, oh, here's, Rick and Debbie doing scare tactics. Man, go look at them. Because you'll not only see these kind of things for ransomware attacks and cybersecurity things addressing the security rule, but also the privacy rule. Record
Right.
releases. Record releases is the number one thing that dentists get slammed on by OCR because I don't want to release my records. I want to require this specific form that's only obtainable by the patient walking into my office.
Right.
Can't
And
do that.
and that opens an investigation. And the first question that OCR is going to ask you is, when was your last risk analysis? All of those fines that we've seen for failure to release records in a timely manner have not been directed at the fact that you didn't release your records. It's because you didn't have the HIPAA security rule in place. You hadn't done a risk analysis. You didn't have any policies on how data was to be handled. If you did, those records would have been released.
Right, right. And I think it's funny. There was a post in another Facebook group yesterday or the day before, and they were talking about, and I do not want to turn into a political thing, but they were talking about, ICE is in my town,
Great.
in my city. And my understanding is they already went into another medical facility and requested records. And what should we do? Well, first of all, don't get your advice from a Facebook group, even mine.
Bingo.
Don't do that. But people don't realize We're talking about those 196 audit control points. Just did the HIPAA training for my entire team at my office last week or the week before. One of the things we had to address was, how do we release information as a business associate if the Department of Justice comes in? How do we handle releases of information if the Secret Service comes in? Because there are very specific requirements under
Yep.
HIPAA. Oh, well, they absolutely need a warrant. If it is an active investigation, they absolutely don't.
Yep.
And your HIPAA written policy must include, however unlikely, you could have a dental office with 127 active patients, and you're in Council Bluffs, Iowa, and you need to have a written
Yep.
policy in your HIPAA plan on how you'll deal with the Secret Service coming in and requesting information. You
Yep.
have to. It doesn't matter if you're a 3 employee dental office or a 12,000 employee hospital group. The rules are the same. The
Correct.
requirements are the same. And I think people don't understand that. Um, and
And I
it's
don't think they know where
really
to start. I think that that's part of the problem is that it, people, the practices don't really know where and how. There's a process. I mean, you and I did that workshop in Savannah,
right.
and where we went step by step what you need to do. I'm actually updating it to reflect the new things because I feel like 90% of them, encryption is a no-brainer. Encryption is going to be there. I'm sorry, it's going to have to happen. With Windows 11, October 25 of 25, which is this year.
Yep.
If you are running Windows 10, you are no longer HIPAA compliant. All of those computers have to be upgraded to Windows 11. But in order to upgrade to Windows 11, you have to have a special computer, or your computer has to be upgradable. What makes it upgradable? It's got what we call a TPM chip. That chip allows for the toggle of encryption. In 2003, when the security rule was written, encryption was a big deal. And I know because I was around computers back in 2003. Let me show you. Oh, I don't know where I put it. But I think I have it here. Uh, I do.
Oh,
I was around. Anyway, encryption back then was huge. You had to do a complete backup of your system. Everything had to be taken off. You had to go through all this process. You had to buy a very expensive piece of software to do the encryption. Then you had to load everything back on and it had to be certified. And it was just a big, so a lot of practices addressed it and opted out of it because it was expensive. Now it's a flip of a toggle.
right.
So there's no reason why your data is not encrypted because it's not. But yet, I go into practices all the time that, that the data is not encrypted, and that's going to bring me to another issue. Is know what your MSPs are doing. First of all, have an MSP.
Right.
There's a difference between an IT and an MSP. An IT is information technology. That's what that means, information technology. And in most cases, those guys are break fix. My printer isn't printing. Can you come help me, please? Under the HIPAA security rule 1643084, right after that sanction policy, you have to have a mechanism in place for monitoring network activity. So if you are not using an MSP that is monitoring your network, you are not compliant.
Right.
Yet, not knocking Facebook, but I can't tell you how many times I go on Facebook. How much do you pay for your IT? Why am I paying so much? You're paying so much because if you don't see them, they're doing their job. If you're seeing them, if you're having to call them, then they're not doing their job. But that said, ask basic questions. Ask them, when was your last risk analysis? I just had a practice where we sent out so I'm very document heavy, as you know, and again, because I'm using the cybersecurity framework, anything we do has to have documentation. So we're in the process of going to be changing to a MSP with a new client of mine. And because right now they're using an IT and we want to go to MSP. So I sent out an RFP and I asked, when was your last risk analysis? Dash, we could do a risk analysis for the practice. That wasn't the question.
Right.
When was your last risk analysis? When did you last train your employees on HIPAA? We could do HIPAA training for the practice. They totally avoided the question.
Yeah.
So
And see
guess
that
what?
people don't realize that your IT company, your managed services provider, your MSP, all of these companies are what's called a business associate.
Correct.
They support a covered entity in one way or another. If you have a third-party billing company, an insurance billing company, they are a business associate. Number one, you should have a business associate agreement with them, whether they're your IT, your MSP, people don't really, you can get one for Microsoft.
Right?
Bill Gates is
Google
not
it.
going to sign yours, but you can get theirs.
Microsoft will sign. Yes, they will give you one, but you got to pay extra for it.
Right,
And that's and same with Google Suites. So many doctors are using Gmail,
right.
but they are using the free version. Well, remember when you signed up for that free thing, you signed that big thing that you read every word through. We scrolled to the bottom and we said, "Yes, give me my free Gmail." You're saying, "Hey, Microsoft, hey, Google, you can scan all my emails. That's how they know what to market to you." But yes, you are absolutely correct. Anyway, you ask questions. In fact, in the new rules, they're saying that they're going to require covered entities to ask more about the security posture up front. So it won't be just sign a BAA. So a lot of times these practices they don't know where to begin. They don't know what needs to be done. You can't conduct a risk analysis if you haven't done all the things to lead up to the risk analysis because you don't know what you're analyzing otherwise. And I can't tell you how many times I'm dealing with MSPs that are not they're not following best practices. I have a practice right now in Georgia that I'm fighting with the MSP because I can't get them to do unique user. That 164.312.1a technical controls, everyone will have unique user access to the information system, not to the practice management. They're telling the doctor, well, you have it. It's because it's to the practice management. No, it has to be to the end. You'd be surprised at the things that the applications and the files that have patient information. I had a practice. This is funny. I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to. I had a practice that I got there. It was like, I don't know, 1st of December. And the doctor, when I got on site, said, Deb, I don't know what's going on. The morale has just really been very bad lately. I don't know what it is, but everybody seems groggy and seems mad at each other. And I don't know what it is. Come to find out, because everybody had to have admin privileges, which is a whole nother thing we don't need to have. But again, it's processes and analyzing and going through. But anyway, everybody had admin privileges. And the hygienist had a cancellation in her schedule one day. So she decided to go through the computer. She found the doctor's, and the doctor's husband was the office manager. So she found a note that he had written, a document that he had written, proposed bonuses, Christmas bonuses for employees. She found their tax returns. Needless to say, she was not a happy camper. And of course, she had to share her aggravation and frustration. And that's why morale was low. Totally avoidable.
Wow.
So we have to worry about those outsider threats. We worry about those outsider threats because, again, we are going to see they're not going to go away. They're going to become more prevalent. But we have problems with insider threats as well.
Right.
And so, a good security program is going to guard against not only the outside threats, but the inside threats. Does everybody really need access to the internet? Think about it. Do they really? Really?
I mean,
No.
no,
I
I would
no.
say a hygienist typically doesn't need access to the internet on their workstation in their operatory.
Neither does an
There's,
assistant.
right, right. You
And
know,
what I tell practices to do is do levels because like some assistants do the ordering.
right.
Okay, assistant level one, she has access to. Can I say some names of companies?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, so Patterson, Benco, Shine, she could go out and order from those companies, but we don't want even Amazon. She can go order because a lot of practices now are ordering from Amazon.
Yep.
That's called whitelisting. We can limit where they go. And
Right.
then assistant level number two, they don't have any access to the internet. Hygiene one, she does some ordering, so she gets access. Hygiene two doesn't. Patient coordinator doesn't need access because she doesn't do anything except for check patients in, check patients out, and schedule their next appointment. Treatment coordinator needs almost the full gamut, but I found a great tool that helps with that as well. So it's just having first of all, you got to identify what your information is. And we concentrate so much on patient information, but every single practice in this United States has financial information. And of course, the doctor is checking his bank account on the practice computer. And
Right.
what these hackers are doing is they're getting into the system. Like I said, they used to just drop and go. Now they're getting in the system and they're doing reconnaissance. They're looking around, they're lurking, they're wanting to see where I'm at, what information we can get to. Let's just drop a keylogger. So they're logging every every keystroke that is being made. Do you know that there is actually some strains of some of these viruses that if they see a Russian keyboard, they will just go on?
Wow.
They won't do anything. It's
They
like,
don't
okay, so have
bother.
one Russian keyboard, just make it so that nobody has to look at the keyboard. But
Right.
I mean, that's how sophisticated, and all we can do is stay one step ahead, but it takes best practices. And we're not willing to implement best practices because it's not convenient for us. Well, you know what? I can tell you that a cyber attack is major inconvenience.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And just
So,
so everybody understands, when she says like a keystroke logger, what they're doing is recording every single key. So they're recording and then they're looking at a transcript and
mhm.
it says, you know, you open the internet, www.mainstreetbank.com, Dr. Rick, password, capital P at symbol SSWORD 123, because nobody will figure that one out.
Exclamation point.
Right, right. And then guess what you just did? You told those hackers if you go to www.mainstreetbank.com, user ID is Dr. Rick, password is capital P, but I changed the A to an at symbol because that's impenetrable.
Yeah.
You gave that to them. And these keystroke loggers, like she said, they're not just sitting, oh,
Mm-mm.
we got a ransomware virus, it's activated, and an hour later we see the skull and crossbones on the screen. They sit there for months or longer
Yep.
watching everything you're doing, not only to watch everything you do, and it's not just your banking stuff. Think
Yep.
about every dental insurance web portal you go to. Think about the patient data that's available on a Delta Dental web portal. All your payments, your EFT banking information,
Yep.
everything is there. And then your banking info, and you give them your account. And I don't know about you, but my bank statement comes and has all the account numbers right on it. They now have that. And it's a real quick Google search to say, what's the routing number for Main Street Bank? Zero three
Right.
one 913 438. What's the account number? 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 0 1 2. You know how long
Bingo.
it
We're
takes me
in.
to process an ACH and drain money out of your account?
They,
2 seconds.
I had a client call me. Now um, someone call me here in Orlando. Um, so she runs a home health company. So somebody got into her systems. They got into her email account. They took over her email account. That then gave them access to all of her banking accounts.
Yep.
And she actually she's from Great Britain.
Okay.
So they're US citizens, but they go back to Great Britain for a couple of months a year kind of thing. And because her business runs pretty well by itself. Anyway, the bottom line is she had a bank over there and she had a bank over here. And guess what? They got into both banks and they locked her out of her email accounts, so she can't even recover her email accounts because of the fact that they've forwarded to the hacker. And so these are the things that we have to guard against, and it comes with layers. We can't just say, well, we're gonna have complicated passwords and that's going to take care of everything. It's not. We have to have layers. So I'm old. There was a time, and I live in the country, there was a time we did not lock our doors. Neighbor needed a cup of sugar, go on in, you know where it is, not a problem. Now we lock our doors, we have deadbolts, we have cameras,
Yep.
we have alarm companies, we have the Ring doorbell. Why? Because times changed. Heck, we don't even tell our neighbors now where the key is or how to get in because we may or may not even know our neighbors anymore. So we got two new neighbors that I have no idea who they are. So times have changed. Times have changed. We've got to change our mindset. We've got to start protecting for the employee, you're protecting your livelihood, you're protecting your reputation. For the doctor, it's protecting the financial, reputational, and emotional investment that they have in the practice. And I've worked with in dentistry now for what, 30 years. And I know that as a team, it is a team. It in most practices, it's a team. And that's like an extended family. And so when these things happen, it hurts everybody. Just to give you some idea of what the impact is I had uh, some of the clients that I've had recently. I had one that is located near a very large university that for some reason everybody wants to go to. I don't know. But anyway, everybody
Party
wants to go to
school.
this university. When the attack happens, it is not where you live, it's where does your patient live?
Right.
So everybody that went to this school, all 65,000 patients, all 50 states and Puerto Rico, all 50 states have to be reported to because all 50 states and Puerto Rico and Guam have policies or have laws in place to protect their residents.
Right.
So, like New York, New Jersey, they and California and North Carolina, you have to report within 15 days. You don't get that 60-day grace. You have to report within 15 days. And we missed that window. Puerto Rico was 10. We definitely missed that window. So right there, you missed that window. Check, red flag, you're being watched. You haven't even gotten to the investigation part yet. All 65,000 patients had to be notified. And in certain states like Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, you have to offer credit monitoring now. Massachusetts, I think, is 24 months. I think New Jersey is 18 months. It varies by state. But
Right.
the point is, it's not just the federal government that you're answering to. It's the state governments as well. So in that data breach, we had to notify all of the AGs, and we did. Florida came back with additional questions. Now, fortunately, we were able to answer them promptly and answer the steps that we had taken, and the practice, honestly, and that's what's so frustrating for me, Rick, is that these practices, when they call me and they say this is what's happened, and I say, are you HIPAA compliant? Well, yes, and we just did our annual HIPAA training, we're good, we did it with Stericycle. No,
Mm. Yeah.
that is not going to be it's not going to fly anymore, and that's not compliance. Risk analysis, a living security management plan, like you said, a sanction policy, a mechanism in place to monitor network activity. That's one, two, three, four of the security role. Next is workforce. Do you have a policy and procedure for hiring? Not just, I had a doctor tell me one time any 12-year-old could answer the phone. I've had practices where they find out maybe 6 months in that the hygienist had actually stolen somebody else's hygiene license. So, check these things, have a process. Plus, you're supposed to train on your policies and procedures prior to granting access to the information system.
Right.
I want to go back real quick on the IT. A lot of times I hear, well, my IT is doing this. My MSP does it for me. IT is information technology, information system. They take care of the tools that help the data to flow. Data and information. Data is information. No IT company is going to tell you how to hire. No IT company is going to tell you how to terminate. Now, they should be notified when you terminate within 1 hour of that termination, ideally before the person walks out the door, but they're not going to tell you those things. They are certainly not going to tell you how to release records. They're not going to tell you how to have those policies because they don't know. They know how to configure a firewall and how to put an EDR on your system and how to monitor. They take care of the tools that you use to flow the data through your practice. But data is also uh, oral as well as written. IT doesn't come into play there.
No.
So this is where we get into that privacy role.
Right. And
And
that's
you
that's
are
it's important for everybody to understand. We talked about the privacy rule, the security rule, the breach notification rule. It's three parts of HIPAA. Like I have in a lot of my presentations, I have a slide with Cerberus, the three-headed dog, and that's HIPAA because it's
right.
got three heads. It's
Hmm.
privacy, security, breach notification.
But security is first.
Security's always first, and it's like 70% of HIPAA, if not more, at this point, is probably 80% is breach or is security, 15% is privacy, because the privacy rule applies to all protected health information, personally identifiable information in any format.
Correct.
The security rule applies to it electronically.
Right.
And you can't just say, well, my IT company handles my HIPAA stuff because there's still written things. Oh, well, we don't have anything in writing. Really? You've never printed out an outstanding insurance claim report and written your notes on it, and then you, as the office manager, leave that outstanding claims report sitting on your desk. And guess what happens that night? Your cleaning company comes in and, oh, your cleaning person says, well, let me look through this little piece of paper. Guess what? You've just had a breach.
And what people don't understand, I had a doctor call me because he had been hacked. And he's like, I said, when was your last risk analysis? I don't know. I'm just a dentist. By the time he told me that 3 times, I'm like, okay, wait. You are a business owner that provides the service of dentistry. So I'm just a dentist doesn't fly anymore. Let's think about the information in a dental office. You have the demographics, you have their dental insurance, you have their employer, you have their oral health history. But we are the only arm of healthcare that also says, oh, what's your blood pressure? What medications are you taking? Because we want to know, are you on a bisphosphonate before we take out a tooth? Oh, and now we have certain procedures. Uh, I haven't done I haven't done insurance since 2014, so bear with me. But back then, 7210 had to go to medical because I don't know why, but we have now procedures that have to go to medical, right? So that means now we have to have their medical insurance. So you know what? The information that we have, I can recreate an entire person. And not only are we seeing an uptick of cyber attacks, we're seeing an uptick of in identity theft. I mean, every day you hear about somebody's house being stolen because of a quitclaim deed being filed with the county.
Yep.
The way to avoid that is get with your county. Almost every county will have uh, a way that you can be notified when anything's filed in your name.
Right.
But have these things in place. But if it's not in writing, it did not happen.
That's right. And I just
So
want to,
you
we
could,
just had one question. I just want to answer it real
okay.
quick. Somebody just asked, will there be a recording available afterwards? And if so, where can it be found? There will. Once the recording is done formatting and uploading to YouTube and going through their copyright checks and all that fun stuff, it'll be on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/practice mechanic. I'll also post a link in the Facebook group, the Dental Billing Academy group. I'll post it on my page. I'm sure Debbie will post it
Yep.
around. But it is being recorded. The replay will absolutely be available. I know some people have a life outside of dentistry and have kids
What?
going, I'm hungry, feed me. Absolutely, the recording will be there. But if you're going to have a question when we get to the Q&A here in a little bit, please ask it now. And even if you're not here, we'll
Oh,
still
yeah.
answer it on the recording. You can come back and review it then as well. But
Yes.
definitely
Please
will be
ask
recorded.
questions. Absolutely ask questions.
Yeah.
Um, what were we talking about?
MSPs, hackers,
Oh,
privacy rules. There
if
and
you gotta have going back to the HIPAA thing, HIPAA security rule. The first thing is the risk analysis.
right.
The second thing is a living security management plan. And what is that? HIPAA, a lot of times, and this is so funny, I'll go into practices and I'll say, oh, where are your HIPAA policies? They will do one of two things. They will give me their OSHA manual,
Mhm.
which is not HIPAA, or they will give me the ADA book that's still shrink wrapped. And it's like, if you had opened this, it would have told you how to write the policies. Uh, so
That
this is,
that the ADA binder, the Patterson, the Shine binders are not your policies.
no, they're
They
not.
are the guide on how to write the policies.
Right.
They're not, oh, I bought it, I paid $400 and I stuck it up on the wall. One of those organizations, and I won't say which one, in 2019 actually sold their HIPAA policies and procedures on a little USB thumb drive.
Hmm.
The problem is the USB thumb drive, custom printed with their wonderful logo, was manufactured overseas in a country to remain unnamed. And it was sold as plug this in, answer the questions, and you will be HIPAA compliant.
Yeah.
Problem is, the little USB thumb drive came with a Trojan tracking
They
virus
don't.
on it.
Yep.
So when you plugged it into your system,
You got that.
you got the virus. And here you are trying to be HIPAA compliant and spent $400 on the little thumb drive,
Yep.
and every single one of them sold
Yep.
was infected with a virus.
Yep.
So
I
you
remember
got to be
that. Oh my
careful and
God.
you got to have the monitoring and you got to have somebody should know. I get a phone call from my MSP when, and one of our policies is you don't plug your phone
Oh yeah.
into our network. Oh, I'm just
Never.
charging it. I don't care because here's what happens. And this is what I tell all of my employees. Number one, anything that's on your phone, the minute you plug it into my network becomes my
Becomes
property.
exactly.
I did my HIPAA training week or two ago with my entire team, and one of our new employees said, "Oh, I totally forgot when I did the HIPAA training. I saw that, but I plugged my phone in yesterday." I'm like, "I know. I got the notification, data transfer and everything was blocked, but don't worry. Every picture in your camera roll was saved on my server, and I'll be going through them tonight."
I'll
And
go
she
you one
went,
better. Yep, I'll
"Oh
go you
my
one better.
goodness, you'll be able to see those?" And I said, "Yep." And she said,
Yep.
"Well, please don't judge me. I'm like, I'm a young single girl." I'm like, "Don't worry." I mean, I just delete them usually, but
I know, but I had an office where they had several of them plugged in. The front desk girls had them plugged in, and the FBI had the doctor's data was on the dark web, and so they when they raided because the information was on the dark web, they knew that they had been a victim of a cyber attack, and that's the thing, you're a victim, so report it, but don't call the police. That's a waste. But they had their phones plugged in, and so they lost their phones because they were attached to the network. They were
right,
seen as part of the network. Um,
right. I don't even plug my phone into our work. I don't even connect my cell phone to our work Wi-Fi. And we have a separate Wi-Fi
right.
system for visitors. And I don't even connect my phone to that because exactly what she said just now, and Terry, we'll get to that in just a minute. But exactly what she just said, once a device has been connected to your network, if the FBI, the Department of Justice, OCR comes in and they have to confiscate devices, that device connected to the network, your hygienist's phone that was connected to charge, becomes a confiscatable device.
Right.
And now they're going to lose it. Now your hygienist is going to be going, "Oh my gosh, the FBI has my phone. They have access to every text message. They have access to every picture. They have access to every web browser history they got it all,
Yep.
you
There's
know."
this wonderful invention. It's called a brick.
Yeah,
It plugs into these little things in the wall that most walls have them. It's a wonderful invention. I highly recommend it.
yeah, yeah. Just
So,
don't plug, and this is really the best way for me to say it. Don't plug any device into your work network, computers, printers, a USB drive attached to anything connected to the network that you wouldn't happily hand over to any law enforcement officer who walked in the door 10 minutes from now.
exactly.
And that's the big thing. But now, Terry, I mean, before we move on, Terry had asked a question. Can you explain MSP? So,
MSP is managed service provider. And so what that is it's somebody who is actually managing your networks. And so you should have managing devices. You should have a perimeter firewall. And that is our first line of defense. Because I'm a mom of three. I taught my children don't talk to strangers. Why do we let the whole world wide web into our house? Our internet providers give us this little box and we put it in our house. Great. But and they give us a password for it, but the administrative credentials for those little boxes are out all over the place. They're on the dark web. So get a firewall. I believe every home should have one of them. They're like $250 at Best Buy or Amazon. What that does is, and just go through and check anything that's not red, white, and blue stars and stripes. What that does is that you can control the traffic that's coming in and the traffic that's going out of your house. So that's your first line of defense is and houses can get hacked as well as offices. It's not as devastating most of the time, but it still can be. So have that firewall. And then you're going to have, it used to be we had antiviruses on our computers. Now we have what we call endpoint detection and response, especially as many are migrating to the cloud. It's even more important that we have that capability of when there's that nefarious activity on that workstation that we are now able to stop and block it. And just a side note, if you go to the cloud, that does not absolve you from HIPAA and it does not absolve you from having an MSP because you still have to manage the network. And now it's not that we just changed some of our protocols or some of the controls that we put in place. Like we'll do geofencing so that unless you have permission, you cannot access it from your home. I had a practice where the employee was fired and they were using a cloud and she had access to it from her house. And she went in and she deleted a bunch of patient information and tried to get another employee in trouble. So there's a whole lot of controls that could have been put in place that would have avoided that. But anyway,
Right.
so you want to have those things in place. Um, so that's what an MSP is. They're monitoring your network. They're because you're busy doing answering the phones, your doctor's doing production. Each each transaction, every time you hit a key, there's like 16 lines of code that are activated. So it takes mechanisms that can go out and read these things and say, that's allowed, that's allowed. Oh, wait, that's not allowed. And so you want to have those monitoring things in place. So get an MSP and ask them, what are they using for monitoring? And are they using an EDR? Or are they just using antivirus? Use those words because they don't think you know, so they just let you go.
Right. And
So it's
remember, your IT company is trying to earn your business by giving you the cheapest price possible,
right.
which means it's not going to typically include all of the things you actually have to have. But that's the other side of it. And I'm not bashing any IT companies, but there are so many out there who they themselves don't know the
And
requirements.
no, they exactly they don't, and they don't educate themselves on them.
Right.
And
I'm going to grab something. I'll be right back.
okay.
Keep talking.
Okay, it's really, really very frustrating for me because I come up across MSPs all the time that say, yeah, we're specialists in cybersecurity, and yet I can't get them to do basic cybersecurity things such as information systems. That should be where everybody should have unique user to the information system, not a shared password to the computer, because there's a lot of applications on there that have, remember, a hacker is getting in and he's looking around. I've had him in the system for 210 days because they're looking around and they're exfiltrating data and they're taking stuff and so they nobody should be an admin. Everybody should be users, and users can't download anything because if users can't download, hackers can't download. But what are they looking for? They're looking for that escalation of privilege.
And that I have on my network. Listen, I'm the owner of the company. I own the network. The domain login that I use every day is a regular
Right.
user. I
User, yeah,
have an admin user
that you never use
that
and
I
put in a
never
door.
use until somebody says I have to do a splash top update and it's requiring an admin.
Yep.
I will walk over, type in my admin login, and it's done. My regular login has 12 did characters in the past.
Right.
My admin login has 31
Right. But
because
that's the thing. And everybody in a practice, even the doctor, should be have a user account, and that's the one he should use every day is the user account. Yes, he has an admin just in case, but he shouldn't be using it. It should be used. So there's controls. It's layers of security. We call it defense in depth because that's what we're doing. We're trying to defend against things happening. So we want to have those layers of security. But when you look at the HIPAA security rule, there's 152 requirements that are administrative. In other words, written policies.
right.
There's 12 physical, yes, physical policies and 12 technical. So the weight is on the administrative. And so there's no MSP that can do that. That said, I believe that every practice should have an MSP that is a partner, not a vendor. And so I want the MSP to have a seat at the table because I teach my clients how to do change management. They are not allowed to add or take away technology until they go through a process. Why are we changing? What is the reason? What is the technology that's required? Because it could be that cone beam that you want to buy is not going to work on your server because you've only got 16 megs of RAM on your server and this requires 64. So have a process in place for how you walk through those things. And iPhone, where to start? I'm actually redoing my workshop. I'm looking at doing it maybe again in Savannah, but maybe in Charlotte because I have been offered a location in Charlotte. And so that's a little
And
more
I will say Charlotte is a very good place because the airport's a hub as well.
right.
People
Yes.
coming from other places, it's a really quick trip.
Yeah. So
But, I just
we're
want to
looking
I
at
want to
redoing
touch
that.
on something real quick before you
Okay.
answer iPhone's question. Because you had said earlier, even if your practice management, if you're using Curve or you're using this, don't think that these things don't still apply to you
Oh
because
yeah.
here is this. Okay, this is a hard drive
I was gonna
that
say what's the
came
guard?
out of our printer.
Yep.
Your printer has a hard drive in it.
Yep.
Our printer was a leased printer
Right.
from Coyote Sierra, whatever. And every 4 years, we get a new
Yep.
one. And in my lease agreement specifically, it says I get the hard drive. This
Yep.
hard drive contains an image of every
Everything.
single page ever printed or copied
Or
on that
faxed.
printer or
Or
faxed or, yeah,
faxed.
that went through the system somehow. And with a $9 cable on Amazon, I can plug it in right here on the end,
Hmm.
put the other end in a USB drive on my computer, and see every image.
Yep.
This made news in like 2017, 2018, because, back then not everybody had copiers and printers and whatnot
Right.
at home. You'd go to the library and pay 5 cents for a copy.
Right.
The Philadelphia Public Library
Yep.
returned their off-lease copier where 100,000 people a year would
Hmm.
go to make copies of their 1040
Everything.
tax returns before they mailed them to the IRS.
Yep.
The copier came off lease, went to auction, somebody yanked the hard drive out of it after buying it for 200 bucks at the
Yep.
auction, and had 100,000 people's tax returns, which includes not only your name and address, but your social security number and your children's social security
Yep.
numbers.
But this is why change management is so important because you want to have a change management process. And as you're removing applications or as you're removing technology, does this technology create, transmit, or store any PHI? Because if it does, then we need to make sure that it's either the drives are taken out or I get into it with I have an office in Orlando and I have another office that is a client of mine in Maryland. And every time they have to do their copier, they call me because they want to come get the copier and I want it wiped on site.
Right,
Well, we do that back at no, you're going to wipe it and you're going to give me a certificate that you wiped it, or you can just remove the hard drive and leave it.
right,
Well, uh, you're not taking the copier because I need you to certify to me that you have wiped it, and I need you to leave me a certification telling me that you've done that.
right.
So either wipe it or give me the hard drive. I, your choice.
Yeah.
I'm good with that. But you go through the processes. So we are looking at redoing the workshop, but is you're going to guess that it's not adequate. Let me just say there's two types of training that you're supposed to do annually. One is security awareness training. I am hoping that that is what you had through your local dental supply rep, where they said, don't talk about your patients in the waiting room, and maybe said, don't click on a phishing email. The second training that you should be doing on a regular basis is on your written policies and procedures. Where to start? The first place to start is with a mission statement. Why do you do what you do? Because that's your why. And that's what we need to protect is why we're here, why we're doing what we're doing. In fact, when you look at the cybersecurity framework, the first question is, does the organization, because the cybersecurity framework goes across all industries, it's not healthcare specific. It is used in Department of Defense, it's used in healthcare, it's used in retail, it's used in finance, it's used in every I attend a cybersecurity meeting once a month, and we have a lot of people from NASA because I'm close to NASA. Anyway, and they use it out there. So you got to know why you're doing what you're doing. I was just in a practice, and I love their morning huddles because the first thing every single morning, they read their mission statement, and then they have a matrix of different goals or different goals that they're trying to reach, and they pick one goal a week and they read that goal every day till they Friday. They want to make sure that they know it, that they're achieving it. And of course, that ties into their mission statement. They review one policy every morning huddle, or once a week, and then they go through and then they go through their schedule and they go through everything. And then they end their morning huddle with a positive quote of the day. It just, and it's only like a 10-minute, 8-minute huddle because they go through their patients, but it's so encouraging, so uplifting. Everybody and the practice runs seamlessly. Everybody knows what they're doing. They have policies. Not only do they have security policies because they've been a client for a long time, but they also, I mean, you walk through their sterile and there's pictures of how each tray is to be set up. So literally, if I had to go in there and somebody says, hey, we need this tray, all I had to do is go find that tray and I would know exactly where everything is and what the tray is supposed to look like, how it's supposed to be set up, because they have SOPs for everything, standard operating procedures for everything. And so, but it's well oiled machine. So often I see, I do troll Facebook. I'll see, oh, so and so won't sign our employee agreement. Well, for me, that employee is gone because you're not part of our team. You're not part of our mission. You're not part of our vision. You're not following through. If you can't agree to the fact that we're going to have 4 paid days off, how are you going to agree to follow our security policies? And see, we think of security as an add-on, but we need to think of it as a foundation or an umbrella. So if it's foundational, everything is weighed on it. If it's an umbrella, every decision should fall under that umbrella. How is this going to affect my security? How is this going to affect me? As women, when we go shopping, at least if I do, when we go shopping, we're looking around. We want to know as we're walking from the car to the store, who's around, because we've been taught that our world is not safe anymore. We had to change our mindset on we now need to be aware of our surroundings. We may need to even carry our keys. I learned a long time ago to carry one key in each of my fingers because you can punch somebody with the keys. So, just little things like this that we've picked up. And so it's just a matter of we've got to change our mindset. So start with that. And then, feel free to reach out. I'll let Rick know when I get my workshop ironed down. Like I said, we're looking at maybe May, 1st of June kind of thing. And it's probably gonna be Charlotte, as much as I love Savannah. Um,
Savannah was fun.
Savannah was fun.
It was fun.
I like it.
And,
But
you got
I
to
think
go for ease of access and
yeah,
all that fun stuff. I mean, and that's really what it comes down to. When you're talking about security, like you said, having those layers, um, and I guess like my question is, oh, they came in and they did our HIPAA training. Did they address what your sanction policies are? Did they tell your team that there is now, and it's not new this year, it's been for a decade, criminal components personally for not only owners but employees to
2013,
HIPAA,
2013.
right? You can go to jail as a dental assistant for
Mm-hmm.
printing out a list of patient names and
Mm-hmm.
taking it home with you. It's a
Mm-hmm.
federal prison thing, not a please don't do it again thing. It's a
Right.
criminal act depending on the circumstances. Even more so if you take that list because, oh, I'm a hygienist or an associate and I'm
Oh,
changing offices and going to work at this one.
no,
Now
no,
you're
no.
taking patient data for commercial advantage. That's 10 years in a federal prison for you, the hygienist or associate, personally. Not, the office is going to get in trouble if they failed to report it. But now they have a reportable breach and you are criminally liable. If your training from your supply house rep didn't include that, it was not sufficient.
Probably not.
And
And did they tell you that you need to conduct a risk analysis? That's been a law since, well, it's been around since 2003. So
right,
HIPAA, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, went into play basically in 1998. And then in 2003, the CMS was had Center for
Medicare.
thank you. They oversaw security. Well, somebody decided, wait a minute, we need to combine this. So they moved it over to HIPAA. So that's when we got the security role, was they took the roles that were under CMS and moved them over to HIPAA. Then in 2009, we got high tech, which was the uh, I can't think of what it means, but it was basically where there was a lot of incentive money given to doctors, and it definitely protected electronic health information. In 2013, they realized that they kind of had a little bit of a conflict. We had HIPAA that protected privacy, it protected written and oral, because, oh, in 1998 and in 2003, we really didn't have computers in our practices. I know I was in
Right.
one. But now we've got high tech, so they combined it. So we actually are under the HIPAA high tech omnibus rule. That said, and we have the amendment for 21, but something else happened in 2021, which started in 2015, but had layers and benchmarks that had to be reached. And the big one that we saw in 2021 was the 21st Century Cures Act. So going back to those records, yes, under HIPAA, you have 30, you can extend to 60, which, by the way, that's changing in the
Yeah.
proposed, it's going to be, well, probably 15. Um, but under 21st Century Cures Act, it assumes everybody has a computer and it's a 5-minute process. So the keywords you're going to hear a lot of are interoperability, and the goal is that patients will have access to their records. And this is what's so frustrating for dentists, for me, for dentistry. So every other arm of healthcare has a patient portal except dentistry. And I know I'm using it because I'm taking care of my parents, and I'm using the patient portal on a regular basis,
Yeah.
except dentistry. Eventually, and I'm starting to see it, patients are going to say, wait a minute, I can do it for my medical doctor, my chiropractor, and my eye doctor. Why can't I do it with you?
You
I
can
can
do
go
it
on
with
and
your
pay my,
vet.
yeah,
Your
yeah,
veterinarian has an online records app
Right.
that you can do. And when I leave my doctor, not my vet, I go to a regular doctor.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that.
When I leave my doctor's office, before I get into my car in the parking lot, I have a
Yeah.
pop-up from the
Yeah.
Epic Chart app saying, you have a new clinical record before my butt is in the driver's seat of my car. My chart note is done, and I can get in my car, start it, turn on my seat warmer, press my little steering wheel warmer button because I don't want to touch a
Yeah.
steering
I
wheel
get
in the
it.
winter. And then while I wait for my steering wheel to warm up, I open the app and I can read the clinical note for the
Yep.
visit I just two
Yep.
minutes ago walked out of.
Yep.
It's coming. I mean, there's a lot of providers that are working on it. There's no
There
reason
are.
not to do it because it saves the office from having to comply with the 21st Century Cures Act, which,
Right.
HIPAA right now is 30 days. In a certain circumstance, you can extend to 60 with cause. The new ruling is, like you said, we're not saying yet, but it's going to be
Yep.
15 days to release a record. But the 21st Century Cures Act says if your records are digital, you have minutes.
Yeah.
It must be an instant release.
And it's $25,000 fine for not
Right.
releasing
And
right
and
off the
here's
bat.
the thing, the 21st Century Cures Act is not enforced by the Office of Civil Rights, it's
Nope.
enforced by ONC. And it's just a different division of the federal government. And
Yeah.
I always put it like this: OCR is a poodle and ONC is a rabid pit bull.
Yeah. And
They don't mess around.
no, and somebody else who's getting in the mix, I'm speaking again. I'm blessed to speak again this year at the 42nd annual HIPAA summit. Um, and one of the things that was talked about last year, the FTC, Federal Trade Commission, they are also actively now getting involved with enforcement on HIPAA because they are looking at it as that it is a violation of certain FTC rules. And so there's a
And
lot
And so many
of
people think that, oh, the FTC, and I hear this all the time. Why do we have to see a patient's ID? Why do we have to check their ID? Why do we need to know their
trading.
social? Because the FTC, not the flower company, but the Federal Trade Commission, or that's FTD, isn't it? Never.
Yeah, that is FTD.
Um, but the FTC has a rule called the red flags rule
Yep.
that says if somebody's coming in and using insurance,
Hmm.
you must identify them every time they come in. That's why a lot of the practice management softwares started including a feature where you could hover over their appointment and
Right.
put a patient picture in, because now you can identify them without having to check their ID. But the first time, you've got to have it
Yep.
because insurance fraud, and I'm not talking about dentists billing for things they didn't do. I'm talking about patients
Right.
stealing health insurance or dental insurance information and using it. Well, I don't have health insurance, but I need this extraction. I'm going to go to an oral surgeon and I'll just tell them I'm John Smith. Here's John
Right.
Smith's card.
Right.
This is my member ID. I don't have it on me. I don't have my ID, but here's my name and date of birth with a stolen identity.
Actually, they're getting that information because they're buying it off the dark web
Yeah.
because there's been so many practices that have been compromised that they can that information is for sale on the dark web. I have a friend that her records were she had to have oral surgery and her records were compromised and we joke with her that she's worth $375. But think about it. If you lose your credit card, your credit card information on the dark web is usually about 50 to 75 cents because they know that they only have a very short window before you realize that your card is compromised. You're going to call the bank, you're going to shut it off. And now we have the capability of locking and unlocking our debit cards or and credit cards within the apps. safes, which I love because
Yep.
I travel and I like to lock them when I'm traveling, but that's a different story. But you want to, that's why you have these things happening, um, because we're seeing those thefts. We're seeing people use that information to steal houses, to get surgery. There was a gentleman in Seattle that started getting EOBs for the heart surgery that he had at Boston Medical, except for he had never been to Boston.
Yeah.
Somebody had taken his information. If call received by another office, we prefer to send images by end of day. Only one office in our small town requires signed release of records.
So here's the thing with that.
That's your department. That's
HIPAA,
privacy.
the HIPAA law is a records release is not required if you are releasing the patient's information for what we call TPO, treatment, payment, or operations. Any covered entity, which that's what you are, is free to release patient data without the patient's consent if it is for the purposes of treatment, payment, or operations of your business. So, treatment would be sending the records to another doctor who will treat the patient, even
It's
if you didn't refer them.
it's continuity of care.
Right. Payment would be you don't need the patient's consent to send their information to an insurance company to get payment. You also don't need their consent to share their information with a collection agency. Imagine if you did, collection agencies would be absolutely useless. Hey, we need you to sign this form consenting to us sending you to collections. Who's going to do that? Nobody's going to sign that. So, and then operations would be a normal operation of your business.
Lab.
So, an insurance audit, the lab being sent information, those are all things you can do without the patient's consent. Now, here's the thing about records releases. It's not required. You don't have to have one. I hate them. I view them as a delay of release. It's a reason to hold up releasing the records, maybe because the patient owes you money, maybe because you still can't do it, I know, but that a lot of offices think, well, the patient owes us money, so we're going to require a records release, so they have to contact us one more time so we can try. You're not allowed to do that. You can't hold a record for money.
Nope.
What you can, even though it's not required, you can request a signed release, but it cannot delay the release of records. You can't require it be a special certain form. And it could
Nope.
be the client sending you an email or a text message through Weave or whatever saying, I'm telling you it's okay to release my records to this location or this email or this address. That has to be acceptable. You can't say, it has to be our form, signed in person, in our office, by the patient with that you can't do. So
Right.
you can require a release, but if you do and the patient complains, you need to be prepared to explain to an auditor why you're requiring the release. And we just want one on record doesn't count. That's not going to pass it.
I tell them, you can send me an email or something like that. As long as I just prefer to have it in writing. That said, when you get a records release from, let's say, you get a subpoena.
Right.
I tell, first of all, know the difference between a subpoena and an attorney trying to look like a subpoena. But I tell practices to call the patient and tell them we've received a subpoena. We have to release the records to them within 10 days or 20 days, whatever it is. We will be sending it out on the 25th. If you don't want this record to go, I'm just telling you, we've got to do this. That would give the patient time to contact their attorney to block so they can I do a courtesy call. I do encourage a courtesy call to the patient. And of course, if you open a chart because you've done that courtesy call, you're going to make a chart entry that you contacted the patient and made them aware that you had received a subpoena.
Right.
And so, of course, the entry before that is we received a subpoena.
Right. Yeah. And that's an important thing. When you're opening a patient's chart, when you're contacting any contact, I love open dental.
Uh,
Listen, I know,
yeah,
but
we're not going there. Go on.
I have been an Eagle Soft guy for 20 years. Anytime somebody calls me now, I say, if you're going to pick between the big three, I would go with open dental for different reasons other than
I get
security
it.
and but
I get it.
I love their comm log.
Yeah.
Every single contact is
Yep.
logged there
Yeah.
because a lot of people don't realize one of those audit control points that we talk about is an audit of account.
Right.
Every time that record was accessed, when
Right.
it was accessed, and why it was accessed.
Right.
And every patient under HIPAA law, and I guarantee you, if you go in tomorrow and everybody watching, go into your office tomorrow and actually read your notice of privacy practices. One of the things it says on there is you, the patient, have a right to an audit of access.
Actually, I bet you they don't have it because a lot of practices don't realize that they have to have a notice of privacy practice list outlining how they handle patient information. That's a contract between the patient and the doctor that it has to be in your waiting room, it has to be the same document, not a different one, on your website, and has to be available to hand out. Here's the problem. They think that the acknowledgement that they
Is
have the patient sign is the notice of privacy practice. It's just that it's an acknowledgement that they've seen it either on your website in your waiting room or it was available to them. So a lot of times I find that they don't have it because they just have the acknowledgement. So
That's
maybe,
crazy because the
yeah,
Notice of Privacy Practices is a federally mandated document with
so is
federally,
HIPAA.
well,
And
yeah,
they're not doing that.
I
So,
know,
it's
but there's a whole patient bill of rights that has to be on your NPP. It's not just the acknowledgement of receipt of Notice of Privacy Practices, it's an actual document. And
right,
like she said, it has to be on your website, hung in your waiting room and or reception area
right,
and available for anyone who walks in the front door and says, I'd like a copy of your notice of privacy
right.
practices, to be handed one. You have to have it. And there's actually a couple law firms, and I hear this every couple years, that these couple law firms,
Ambulance chasers.
ambulance chasers will go to dental office chiropractors'
Yep,
websites, see there's no NPP, and then you get a letter.
yep,
We're going to file a lawsuit against you. We're going to file a complaint because people don't realize the whistleblower fee for a lot of this stuff is like a 30%. So if I turn you in for a HIPAA violation and they fine you $100,000, I get $30,000 of
not
that.
anymore. That's been taken away. Now,
They just upped it this year.
oh, then I missed that one because I know that they put it in and then they took it out
Yeah, it was
and
10
it
to
was on freeze.
15%.
Okay.
Now they just upped it to 30
Wow.
in the
That's
past 9
awesome.
days.
Oh, okay. Well, that explains it.
Yeah.
I've been a little busy.
Yeah, I know. I know. I know. You've been on the road a lot. But yeah, they upped it to 30% for both the whistleblower, and for attorney general complaints for fraud. 30%.
The problem is that practices, and I get that budget is an issue. I was a practice manager. I completely understand.
Right?
Security doesn't have to be expensive, but you've got to step out and stop looking at, okay, what's the cheapest way that we can get by and say we're HIPAA compliant because it's not working anymore. And the cyber attacks are it's not a matter of if, it is a matter of when. And so, and that, it's not going to go away. I think we're going to see more and more of them. I think and it's not that they're becoming more sophisticated or anything like that. It's just that we want to do things our way.
Yeah.
And the hackers are like, fine, do it your way. I'll just walk through the front door.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that's what they're doing because RDP is free. Remote desktop, I can log into my computer from my house. Yay! And oh, there's Kay. And then and um I can get in. Well, I can't tell you how many data breaches I've had because the hackers are also able to get in through RDP. So question, and this is privacy, so I'm going to let you deal with this. My granddaughter's doctor refuses to give me a note for the appointment she was seen at this year because we last them and didn't needs them for school. The office said, too bad, we won't give you one.
Say that again.
They're not giving she took her granddaughter to school or to the doctor and she needs a doctor's note and the doctor is not giving her one. What
I
can she do?
mean, that's not a HIPAA thing. They're not required
Yeah,
to give an excuse card for you to
they're
go
really
to school,
not.
unfortunately. I wouldn't go back to that office, but that's not something that falls under any rule that says they must provide that. Now, if you ask for a receipt showing you paid a copay, or if
Uh,
you ask for a record of the clinical note showing the time and date that the clinical note was completed,
right.
that falls under HIPAA, and maybe the school will take that as it was done. But, as far as them being required to write you a get out of school free note, they're not required to do that. And I actually ran across a client, not last year, I think the year before, like 2023, who would actually charge insured patients because your insurance reimburses me so little. If you need a work or school note, I charge $50 for those. He was
Wow.
he wasn't a client for very long, but
No. Yeah.
it just doesn't there's not a requirement, but you can get a copy of the clinical note. Maybe the school will take that and redact
Yeah.
certain information if there was anything sensitive on it. Um, but they're just not.
Yeah. Yeah. That would be a courtesy thing. That's a sad thing that
Yeah,
they would not want to.
yeah. And like I said, I wouldn't go back there, but
Yeah.
that's really all you can do. But well, I mean, and any more questions, as always, I am gonna post this link on YouTube or post the video on YouTube. I'll put the link in the Facebook group. Um,
Send it to me. I'll post it.
Yep. So, please, in the comment section, if you're watching this on YouTube and have questions, ask them in the comment section. If you're watching the replay link on Facebook, please ask your questions. Debbie and I will both see them,
Yep.
but, I don't see any more questions popping up here in the Zoom. I popped over to Facebook and I don't see any.
Well, and today is a good day to start your security program because
It,
it takes 12 months to get it in place to at least have in order to meet that safe harbor.
yeah.
So, and I will let you know when I decide when I get the workshop. Like I said, we're looking at beginning of May
Okay.
kind of thing in Charlotte.
Right. Well, don't do it the weekend after Mother's Day because that's my annual Orlando trip.
Oh, that's right. I don't even know when Mother's Day is. It's been so
I don't
chaotic
know.
for
It's some
me.
Sunday in May.
Yep. So I think we're looking at the first weekend. So
Okay. Yeah.
I think that will be okay for Mother's Day. I think I'm going out of town for Mother's Day, so I think I'll be okay. I
Good.
think it's the 8th.
run away from your children for Mother's Day.
Yeah, that won't settle well, will it? Oh, I'll have to rethink that one. Okay.
That's all right. But yeah, as always, ask any questions you have. I just want to
Yes.
thank Debbie for showing up. I know we did get one pop up here real quick at the last minute. Overwhelming when the compliance is handed over to one employee to figure out. Now it's their responsibility. It can be. My
It can be,
advice
but
to you, and this is what I tell everybody, don't try and do it yourself. Get help, get that managed services provider, that
and
MSP.
work with
Get
somebody, yeah,
right,
work with
get
somebody
a
who understands it.
consultant. You
Yeah,
know, the what you're gonna pay a consultant, whether it's Debbie for cybersecurity or whatever, is far, far less than
a
the
data breach.
stress that is going to be caused. It's far less than the stress factor, let alone the costs, the downtime, the lost production, the you don't have insurance for it, the no, you can't use any device on your network and you need a new server and 7 new workstations tomorrow. No, you can't use your backup because your backup is corrupted because they had that
If
virus
it's,
on there for six
yeah,
months and you backed it up for 6 months on every one of your backups.
oh, I've had them delete the backups. I've had them, if the backup is set to run for 10 and the 11th one drop off, they'll do 11 backups with it being frozen or encrypted. They do this is why it's important to have defense in depth
It is.
because it's not going to go away.
It is. HIPAA is like an onion. It
It
stinks
is.
and there's a lot of layers.
Yep.
And that's really the way you have to do it is it's defense in depth. It's having multiple layers. That's why I think about it when you're trying to protect anything, you know, think
Yep.
about like the Secret Service. There's people right around the president. Then there's people in an outside perimeter. Then there's more people up on roofs. Then there's a helicopter, and above that helicopter is a satellite.
Yeah. But I mean, bring it back to us. I mean, one of the last things I do at night, and again, I live in the country, so if somebody's coming down my road, it's usually because they're chasing my cow. But the last thing I do before I go to bed is set the alarm.
Right?
And so, it's that's the world we live in today. And so we've got to, and the law is there. It's meant to be protective. It's not meant to be restrictive. And sadly, many people have turned it around to where it's restrictive.
And that it's there, it's protective for good reason because it's important information that we are protecting.
It is
You
livelihoods.
you want your information protected when you go to
Yep,
a hospital or to another doctor. Your patients expect the same from you.
exactly.
So, very important to know. But again, Debbie, thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time. It's very timely.
Thank you.
As always, ask any questions you guys have, comment section on YouTube, on Facebook, wherever. If you do want to learn more, I know Debbie has a lot of great information on her website. It's DK Carr, CARR, DKCARR.com. Check that out. She has a lot of great information on there.
Or
Um,
ping
but
me, I'll answer.
but absolutely. She is in the Facebook group as well. She's a member of the Facebook group. So, please, please, please ask any questions you have. We are more than happy to answer them anytime.
Yep,
Josephina, I saw you just raised your hand. If you want to put your question in the Q&A before we end the call, we'll answer it real quick. If not, ask it in the group on one of the video replays or just post it in the group and we'll answer it right away. But I'll give Josephina just a minute or two to see if she's typing in there. If you are typing in, hit send halfway through your question so I know you're typing. If not, that's okay too. But no, looks like we're good. So,
Oh, wait.
oh, she accidentally raised. Well, that's terrible. How dare you? No problem at
We'll
all.
talk
So,
later.
thank you again, everybody. Have a great night. Thank you, Debbie. And, we look forward to seeing you guys all Friday morning in the group for another Drive Live video. But have a great night.